everyone. Welcome back. Today I was decluttering my desk at home where I usually sit to edit these videos, and I am not a neat and organized person, and it had months of just a bunch of crap on there that I needed to clear off and organize. And I happened to find this little notebook that I had on that desk for years now, and I opened it up, had a look what was in there, and I realized that I had notes in here from like 2019, so about 5 years ago, and they were clearly just me putting in notes for reviews that I was doing at the time and filming. And I noticed a couple of pages that had a list of questions. It looked like one of those tag videos that occasionally pop up in fragrance YouTube. And I couldn't remember if I actually ever ended up doing this tag. So I thought for this video, I'll do something a little bit fun, something that I haven't done for quite some time. There's 10 questions here, which I was able to answer, and I'm going to tag a few people in my description to do this on their channels if they want to. But I would love for you to have a look at the 10 questions that I also put in the description. And if you want to answer them in your comments, feel free to do so. It's going to be fun to read some of them. So I'm going to kick right off. The first question that was on this list was, what is next on my to buy list in terms of full bottle, assuming it was full bottle? And that's a pretty easy answer for me, because there are two particular fragrances that I have my keen eye on. I have samples of them at the moment, and I really love both of them. They actually made my top 10 list recently, and they are Angelique Noir from Guerlain and Night Clubbing from Celine. So yeah, unfortunately, my tastes are getting quite expensive, but one of those two bottles will be my next full bottle purchase. Next question was, if I could choose if I only could choose one mainstream brand and one niche brand. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call them mainstream, and that way I can include Guerlain, which would be my choice, even though it could be argued they're not strictly a designer brand, but they are pretty much as mainstream as a lot of designer brands. But I can't go past the variety and quality that I get from Guerlain. They've made some of my all-time favorite fragrances. For the niche side, it was a little bit more interesting, because the brand that I would choose, I actually don't own. I only own a couple of bottles from this brand. And I have been thinking about making a video just dedicated to this, but the brand that I would choose is Serge Lutens. Now, my reasoning behind that is that there are a few factors about that brand that I really like. So in no particular order, I really love that it's basically been a two-man show with that brand right from the beginning, with obviously Serge being the driving force in terms of the founder and the creative direction. And I love the fact that he's essentially exclusively only worked with one perfumer, and one of my all-time favorite perfumers, Christopher Sheldrake. So there's that part of it. But then there is also the fact that even though I have not tried so many of their fragrances, I've also tried a lot more in this brand than a lot of other brands. And I haven't really disliked anything that I've smelled so far. And so everything that I've smelled, at the very least, has been interesting. And the one thing about this brand as well that I've only kind of realised in the last week or so is they have several perfumes that could easily be a reference for that particular scent profile, or even for a particular ingredient or note. For example, I own Borneo 1834, and to me, that could easily be a reference patchouli. And by reference, I don't mean that it's objectively the best patchouli out there. It means that it's the patchouli that I'm basically going to compare every other patchouli perfume to. I did that also with Ambre Sultan as an amber perfume. That was a perfume that I compared other ambers to. I have Fumerie Turk, which is a honeyed tobacco fragrance. And again, in that particular genre, there are so many honeyed tobaccos out there, and is it going to be as good as Fumerie Turk? There are so many others. I mean, for instance, animalic musky perfumes. You've got Musk Kubla Khan, Iris Silver Mist. What else am I thinking of? Santal Majuscule is also another, is a sandalwood that could easily be a reference sandalwood for me. And there are so many others. I mean, you know, if you want a rose, you could go with Fille de Berlin. There is, of course, there is also Saracen, which for me is my reference jasmine perfume. You get my drift. Anyway, so that would be the niche brand I would recommend to anyone who wants to start exploring niche. You might not find anything you love, but at the very least, you're going to see what is possible within niche perfumery, where there is much less artistic restriction compared to a lot of designers that you're going to smell in a department store. The next question for this particular tag series what were the best and worst blind buys I've ever made. The best blind buy is easy for me because even though I no longer own it and I no longer plan on replacing it, the best blind buy I ever made was very early in my exploration of perfume, right? You know, just before I started this channel. That was Timbuktu from Lutens Parfumeur. And I've talked about this before, but this kind of was my gateway drug for perfumery and really getting into fragrance in a big way, seeing what the possibilities were with fragrance outside of your usual limitations of department store designer brands. So this is still the most significant blind buy that I've ever made. And admittedly, I'm not afraid to admit that I did blind buy this based on the 5-star review in the guide. The worst blind buy I've ever made, that is difficult because I don't know if I've really disliked anything that I've blind bought. I've definitely blind bought fragrances that I just never connected with or sort of never met my expectations based on the reasons I blind bought it. I'm gonna pick a controversial one here, okay? And the reason it's controversial is that when I blind bought this fragrance, I really liked it. And I also did a review of it and I gave it a good review at that time. The fragrance is Ganymede from Marc Antoine Barrois. Now, I'm not sure why I regret it, but I kind of regret purchasing that fragrance before it became so popular, because I almost regret blind buying it and also talking about it in a positive manner, because I think it's kind of spawned a style of perfumery that I don't really like in terms of crazy, long-lasting aroma chemical-based perfumes that now seem to be copycatting on that Ganymede style. So I liked it at the beginning, but then I didn't own it for long. I sold it, and I've had no regrets since then, because I can only imagine, given how much I'm smelling that kind of scent profile in the wild now, that I am glad that I don't own it anymore. So is it a regret? I don't know, but I kind of wish that I hadn't blind bought it and talked about it so glowingly. This next question is a little bit related to the previous one, and it's kind of worded differently, but the question is, what is the worst purchase that you've ever made, fragrance purchase that you've ever made? Now, it wasn't even one where I spent a lot of money. I fell for the hype, basically. It was a time when I was watching a lot of YouTubers. I'm going to admit, I was naive, and I fell for the hype, and I bought a bottle of Aqva Amara from Bvlgari, and I mean, people talked about this like it was a game-changing aquatic fragrance. And when I bought it, I kind of was trying really hard to convince myself to like it, but that thing just didn't not work on my skin. In fact, it's like I even think about it now, and I have a physical reaction to what I remember that smell being of, and that was the worst purchase, mainly because I feel bad that I spent so much energy. Well, first that I fell for it, and then I spent so much energy trying to like it. One thing that has happened with me over the years is that I now have way less time and energy to spend on anything that's mediocre, and I just feel silly for falling for the hype. This question is, what is my most complimented perfume? And I get very, very few compliments as it is. But I do have one fragrance that I thought of, because I think mainly because it might have been one of my most recent compliments. And I had been complimented on this one at least on one other occasion. So I own no compliment magnets, but I do know for sure that a couple of people have liked this one when they've smelled it on me, and that is, surprisingly, Afternoon of the Fawn by Etat Libre d'Orange. It's like, if you had to ask me which one I would predict would get the most compliments, this would not even be near my thoughts, but it seems to work on my skin. This question relates to what is my most expensive fragrance and what is my least expensive fragrance. So I could have answered this in a couple of different ways. I think the most money I've paid for a fragrance was for Amouage Epic Woman, but when I was having a look at this, I had to choose Dior's Au Noir. Now, I'm choosing this only because this is a 250ml bottle, and I was curious to see how much a 250ml bottle of the current Dior Au Noir was. And on the Dior website, it's listed as over $900. So I guess if I was buying this right now, this would definitely be my most expensive perfume. The cheapest perfumes that I have, and when I say cheapest, is the ones that I've paid the least amount of money for, apart from any perfumes that were gifted to me. I bought this 50ml of L'Homme Ideal cologne from Guerlain for $20, 20 Australian dollars, and the Rochas Moustache 1949. This is the EDT. This was $30 purchase, brand new in boxes. That one was 100 ml as well, or I think it's 100 ml anyway. So they were my most expensive and least expensive perfumes. Next question is, what are my most represented brands in my entire wardrobe? Easy one to answer. I own 8 perfumes from Guerlain, and if for interest's sake, I then own the next most from Chanel, where I own 6 Chanel. This question is sad because it is, what is my favorite discontinued fragrance? And the easiest way to answer this is Equipage Geranium from Hermes, and basically because it just was listed as my number 1 current favorite fragrance in my wardrobe, in my rotation, and apparently it is also discontinued, or at least at the moment not available to purchase from Hermes. This question is, what are my favorite fragrance-related videos to watch? So I'm not actually subscribed to many fragrance channels, a few, and whenever I can, I will watch them. But I generally have, for quite some time now, stopped watching straight up reviews of fragrances, and it's mainly because I don't feel like I need to learn about a fragrance from another reviewer. The fragrance channels I like to watch are the ones that always add some personal connection to the fragrance or fragrances that they're talking about. I really like to see the different approaches to how I approach wearing fragrances, and that to me is what's of interest, rather than does this person agree with what I think of this perfume A? And like I think I would find it really boring if I watched someone purely because they had the same opinions as me and were just doing it in a kind of systematic, almost robotic manner, where they would list the notes, talk about how long it lasted on their skin, and I think I like to watch videos where there are stories connected, or where there is a personal, creative, imaginative connection to the way they're describing the perfume. Now that style is not for everyone, but I like to get a bit of the reviewer's personality as part of the review of that fragrance and how it relates to them. And that usually will give me enough information to know how much they really love or not love the perfume that they're talking about. And by all means, I quite enjoy watching perfumes that are also a negative opinion about the perfume, but usually they will explain why that is. If I'm learning something about the fragrance that I didn't know, all the better. And the final question for this tag is, what fragrance have I worn on my skin more than any other? And this is an easy one for me to answer. It is Dior's Fahrenheit in multiple different iterations and vintages. It's since I started recording Scent of the Days, this is the only fragrance that I have at least counted I've worn more than 50 times. So it's Fahrenheit. Okay, so I hope that was of interest. Let me know in the comments if you want to. It's up to you. You don't have to answer all the questions that I've just answered, but I'd love to hear some of your responses, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye for now.